Thank you. Catherine West.
Thank you, Mr. Dowden. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and thank the honourable member from Newcastle for introducing the debate and for all those who signed the petition. The situation in Ukraine is heartbreaking, and with continued scenes of devastation and loss beamed onto our screens every hour of every day since the launch of President Putin's illegal and illogical invasion, many of us are suffering just watching it, let alone understanding what must be really happening to people facing this sort of attack day in, day out. Mr. Dowd, I was very pleased last night to join a number of my constituents outside the Hornsey Church Tower for a simple vigil with the Songworks Choir, the Crouch End Festival group, and to hear some children reading poems and having their thoughts about the importance of peace and the importance of understanding how we can push for a peaceful resolution and for President Putin to wake up to himself and stop what he is doing. And I was delighted at the end of the event to meet Marta, one of my constituents' mothers, who came to the UK on Saturday. And I'm sure the Minister is relieved to see that there's at least one happy story in this difficult debate. And I just thought I would briefly relay what the family went through. So Marta was one of the lucky ones. She managed to flee to Romania after the Russian invasion. But when she tried to reach the UK to be reunited with her daughter and her grandchildren, she did enter a Home Office bureaucratic nightmare which went on for 10 days. No information on the government's website on how to apply, then a different website which continually crashed. The demand for appointments was so high at one point they were told there were no appointments until May. Then 10 days of sleepless nights for the family and incredible stress, all to bring over the wonderful Marta, who I got to meet last night, who was in floods of tears, but having seen the solidarity from local people, having met her and just seen what she'd been through. It does seem rather ludicrous that these families are going through this experience at such a difficult time. Marta's daughter told me, currently the attitude from the Home Office appears to be that it's an immigration process. It's not. People are refugees fleeing war. Even the Ukrainians with family here are being denied a swift passage to come, and that shames our country. So I just also wanted to put on record the first-rate work of my parliamentary staff, who rushed down to Portcullis House to meet the Home Office staff who were there last week, and that casework did actually end up in a result. But I just wonder, I wonder what the Minister thinks about all those other people who, for one reason or another, don't have a contact, who are equally desperate as Marta is, but who didn't have that hard-working constituency team within an MP's office and have no way of telling us what a terrible situation they're having. So in response to the brutal military campaign, Ukrainians, and it must be said, so many Ukrainian women and children, as always, the worst affected by war, have fled their homes and their country for safety elsewhere in a movement of people not seen in Europe since the dark days of 1945. And in response to the grave humanitarian challenge, many Europeans have opened their borders to provide much-needed safe refuge to those in need, with Poland hosting the bulk of those fleeing the devastation, but countries as far afield as Ireland opening their doors in Ukraine's time of need, with an offer of up to 100,000 refugees in a country of a little over 5 million people, whereas, of course, we are a greater country in population and have a larger economy, and if we had a more efficient government, would have more money to be able to manage the needs of all and to manage to encourage people to share. I do welcome what's been announced in the Chamber in the last hour, and I think we can all get around that offer now, and we can encourage our constituents who do have a spare room or who are able to step in to this extraordinary challenge and who are able to show that generosity of spirit. Labor colleagues and I have applauded many of these decisions, for example, the one that I've just talked about, but the failings of the Home Office really do need to be reviewed, and I would encourage the Minister, once this immediate crisis is over, is to really learn from this and what happened with Afghanistan, which was an embarrassment not just for the Foreign Office. And I know the Shadow Minister for Immigration here, the member for Aberafon, actually is well placed to help with any sort of review in the future because he led on the Afghanistan work from the Foreign Office point of view, but then can also comment on both schemes and how they're getting on. And I do welcome the appointment of a refugee champion in Lord Harrington, and I think that it would be really useful in a short while to have a joint meeting so that we can really thrash out the issues that we as MPs deeply care about, and we can help the Home Office, help the Foreign Office to deal with these crises in a much more effective way. Russia's military were massing on Ukraine's borders many months before the invasion, and the Ministry of Defence and Intelligence from the US were giving cast iron warnings of an imminent invasion for much of the first part of 2022. And the idea that this just happened 10 days ago is ridiculous. I mean, the Minister has, of course, got first-hand briefings from the security services and will know that this has been going on since well before Christmas even, and that we needed to think through what our actions were. We know that the President of Russia lies and is frequent in his lying, and so we should have recognised that as a pattern from before and decided to design some risk assessments and put in place staff to deal with it, rather than only this weekend there's been what's being called a surge of Home Office staff, and I feel that this is once again being lurched from crisis to crisis, typical of the government which actually has no strategy, so that when a crisis does come it falls down again, whereas if it had a strategy, if it could learn from its mistakes, we wouldn't be here yet again. We all know that any invasion or military action inherently causes refugee flows, and yet again behind the curve, woefully out of step with both our European allies and the rest of Whitehall. This is a pattern of behaviour that we must tackle so that the next time that there's something like this, we can really learn from these mistakes. Every day I receive dozens, if not hundreds, of emails from my constituents in Hornsey and Wood Green, keen to open their homes to those in need, willing to offer employment to Ukrainians, and generally taken aback by the poor approach to date. We cannot continue to fail those in need, and I urge the Minister to listen to the many calls from today. Get a grip. The Ukrainian people have been added to many Afghans seeking support. We owe it to these people in desperate need to live up to our moral responsibilities. Minister, fix the mess. This won't be the final refugee crisis, and we simply cannot accept this shambolic reaction will be the norm each and every time. Thank you, Mr Dowd.